This business meeting of the Board of Education of the Cleveland Municipal School District will come to order. Mr. Stockdale, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Ellicott?
Here.
Mr. Briggs?
Here.
Ms. Jones? Mrs. LeBron?
Here.
Dr. Sridhar? Mrs. Welchow?
Here.
There are 5 members present.
Thank you. I ask everyone who wishes to rise and participate in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. The chair will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the board work session of November 6, 2024.
So move.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The meeting minutes are approved. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Warren Morgan to present this evening's CEO report. Dr. Morgan?
Thanks so much, Chair Ellicott. Happy almost Thanksgiving. This is definitely a time of the year to reflect and just be grateful. I know one of the things we always start our senior leadership team meeting with is gratitude. And so not just on this time of the year, but always really opening up with a moment of gratitude for so many things, whether it's work-related or whether it's personal. It's definitely the season of thanks and gratitude. A few things I just want to share, a couple of updates on, and I have a few accompanying slides to go through them. Thank you. So we had a recent event, a college tour with some of our scholars, and I actually will be inviting our Chief External Affairs Officer, Lisa Farmer-Cole, up to just share a little bit of the highlights from this tour. I know this is the time of the year where many of our scholars are starting to go on college tours, and this was one that just took place a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. Good evening, Chair Ellicott and board. I am thrilled to share just a couple of highlights about the Parent University College Tour. To give just a little bit of background context, our Parent University College bus tours are where families come together with their children to go and visit colleges based on CMSD acceptance rates, persistence rates, and Say Yes affiliation. They started in 2012, and they were so successful that in 2014 we were featured in Ed Week, and we typically go on about 6 to 8 per year. And this semester the college bus tour traveled to Eastern Michigan University, Bowling Green State University, and culminated at Central State University. And what made Central State so exciting is that they had on-site admissions, and 12 of our students were accepted on-site. So we're really excited about that. Again, the criteria that I spoke about will be utilized to decide upon where we will go second semester, but also parents will give input. And right now they're asking for Kentucky State University because at Central State they attended a football rivalry, the football game that was the rivalry with Kentucky State, which was really popular, the Ohio State University, the University of Cincinnati, and Wilberforce. So we're just hoping to keep it moving. Anthony Brown wanted me to share with you all that when we talk about college university bus tours, it's where families come together in order to make our students even more successful. And I'll take any questions at this time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Farmer-Cole. Also, I'm proud to report, as you guys know, the window for our Get More Opportunities 2.0 recently closed at the beginning of this month, and we were so excited that we received 361 applications that were submitted. So they're in the process of being reviewed at the school, and we'll have more of an update on what the distribution of the gifts are. But once again, grateful for all of the feedback that brought this program back, improved it, and we're looking forward to seeing what our recipients are, and really grateful for the support that's not only happening at the schools, by principals, teachers, as well as scholars that are helping to do this review process, but also with Dr. Jacqueline Brown and others in our academics department that really helped to spearhead this. So really grateful for all of that support. Also, we had a couple of other highlights and a few other announcements that I want to share. Pre-for-Cle, a longstanding partner of CMSD, but also here in Cleveland, out of the Cleveland plan to really make sure we expanded options, that we are expanding options for our most young scholars that we have in the community, celebrated 10 years of being a partner and also being in existence a couple of weeks ago. And many different partners, not only CMSD, other partners that provide early child care learning in the Cleveland area were there to celebrate, and there were award recipients. CMSD was the recipient of 3 awards. We had one of our amazing educators, pre-K educators, get awarded an award. We also received an award just for the work that we've been doing to expand pre-K options within our system over the past 10 years. And then we also received the Trailblazer Award because of that impact, and Pre-for-Cle cited where pre-K options were prior to Pre-for-Cle and the partnership with CMSD and how many scholars are actually obtaining pre-K services now. It's not where we want to be, and making sure that every household really in Cleveland has access to pre-K education, but it has grown over time. And then I've been on these listen and learn sessions with our scholars. The picture that's posted here on the slide is with me and some of our scholars from Campus International High School. It was a really great session to learn some of the things that are working in their schools, but also some of the things that they would like to see changed. And I had the opportunity to meet with these brilliant scholars. They had an amazing presentation, a PowerPoint deck, their own data that they were sharing just in terms of some insights that they have, and I was really grateful to see all of them almost move into tears just hearing how well they were prepared, but also how much they were advocating. Today I also met with 2 student groups, one group at John Hay, another group at Digital in Davis. So it was really great as I'm getting out to hear from scholars. I think tomorrow I'm at Glenville, just to sit with them and hear what's working for them, but also what's top of mind for them. This is really just helpful for us to continue to hear from our scholars. A few other announcements before I bring one of our other team members up. The school choice portal is now open, so 'tis the season for making sure our 8th grade scholars are selecting a high school, and you know, for all families that may be choosing a school within CMSD, that portal is open. You can go to our website for more details, and also contact us if you have more information about that. We also will be participating in an event with Cleveland Public Library as well as the Legal Aid Society on Monday, November 25th, where I believe we're going to have nearly 500 scholars having the opportunity to meet Ruby Bridges. Not only will they have the opportunity to hear about her story, the impact, the legacy, I believe the scholars will have the opportunity to receive a book from her, and it will be a really great event. Hopefully we'll be able to report back on that in our next board meeting for you guys to get more information on that. At this time, I would like to invite our Chief Financial Officer up, Kevin Stockdale, up. We had a couple of questions, one just on the 5-year forecast that was presented, and I know that will be voted on later on this evening. But then also we had some questions about IDEA funding that I wanted to make sure Chief Stockdale was able to address regarding IDEA funding.
Thank you. To Mrs. Welchow, thank you for the question at the last board meeting about the variances from the May 5-year forecast to November. I'm going to talk about fiscal year 2025 because that's where we have the best data, but these trends will continue across the forecast. So overall revenue was a little bit higher in November than what we had expected in May. It's primarily driven by higher property tax collections and actually higher TIF revenue than what we had projected. TIF revenue is kind of difficult to project because of the way it's collected and the way that we actually receive it. It can be difficult to time. Those factors are offset by some of the factors that I described, which is that as the district has an increased property valuation, the amount of state aid that we receive decreases. So we're receiving more property taxes and we're receiving less state aid. Most of those were in the variance range of about 1%. On the revenue side, or on the expense side, excuse me, expenses that we projected are a little bit lower in November compared to May, and that was really based on the final fiscal year 24 information. So we had lower expenses on staff costs, and then we know that we have improved our situation with our health insurance premiums. We did have some increases in purchase services, supplies, and materials, those non-personnel areas. Now, the good news about this is that this is an area that we can address more readily because it's an area that we control that we can kind of quickly deal with. So in the net, a small amount difference in the variance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about that. I think there was also a question about our spending on some contracts using funding from an IDEA fund. An IDEA is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. They are funds that we receive from the federal government and from the state. In this case, the funding in question was not actually restricted IDEA funds. It was not intended when we received it for students with special needs. So in the finance world, we would call it unrestricted funds. Those funds we can use on anything that we would normally purchase, and so we made purchases accordingly.
And one other announcement that I have before I close out my report, just to report that the Marion Seltzer community, as well as the Cadell Park community, we've been engaging over the past almost 6 months, collaborating on a path forward, and just hearing from the group and hearing from the participants that have been involved in it, we've gotten a lot of great insights, lots of great learning, and really excited that the work is moving forward and also in collaboration with the city. So just really grateful for the voices, grateful for the feedback, and grateful for the collaboration. It's really important that we do this work with our community, and we are learning a lot through that work, and I know that the Seltzer Steering Committee of many different stakeholders are really involved in that, and hearing that it's going well and excited to report more as we get more developments. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. Any discussion or questions from board members? All right. Next, we will have our public participation period. During this segment of the board business meeting, we will hear all public comment on either agenda or non-agenda items. This public participation will be for persons who previously submitted the online request to speak form to address the board for up to 3 minutes. You will see a timer on the screen to your left and to your right where you can keep track of time. If anyone wishing to address the board has any written materials that they would like to submit to the board, please give it to Mr. Bertzloff over to my left, and he will distribute the material to the board. As usual, again, we will limit each speaker to 3 minutes. We ask that all respect this limit. First, we have Mr. Errol Savage.
Mrs. Ellicott, if you come into the library as an adult and you want to check out a book, that's my job to help you find that book, and I'm going to do that. If you know the title of the book, but you misspell it or you miss a little bit of it, I'll still be able to find the book. If you don't know the author's exact name or you spell it a little bit incorrectly, I'm still going to get you the book. If you don't know the title or the author, but you can at least describe the subject, I know I can find the book. And even if you said there was a really good book that your friends were talking about and you just don't know a whole lot about it, if you can give me an approximate publication date, I'm going to be able to get that book for you. And I don't need a thank you or a high five. That's just my job, and that's what I'm supposed to do. Mrs. Ellicott, I don't know if it's a function of my age. I don't know if it's poor choices that I made in life, but I'm just generally annoyed. Nothing seems to me to be as good today as it was in my memory of yesterday. I had the pleasure, Mrs. Ellicott, of working with someone who retired, I think, the year you came, or the year after or before. It sort of blends together. I found that individual that I worked with to be competent, effective, efficient. People said he and I got along well because we were both equally crusty. And I find more and more I miss him dearly. That was Mr. Jim Mix, the custodian of public records for the city of Cleveland, well, the Cleveland Public Schools. When I used to file public records request with Mr. Mix, Mrs. Ellicott, he'd respond, he'd answer, and he'd give me what I was asking for. And every time he'd respond, Mr. Mix would write his name on his response. Jim Mix, custodian of public records. He seemed to take some pride in his position, just as, to an extent, I do too. He identified with his position, maybe a little bit too much even, maybe just like me. He'd list his phone number and he'd say, if you have questions, Mr. Savage, give me a call and we'll help you find whatever else it is that you're looking for. But that was then, Mrs. Ellicott, and you and I deal with now. Now when I file public records request with the district, they respond, but they don't tell me who they are. They won't list their name. I'm sort of the opinion if you write somebody something, sign your name on it. They just write public records request. They list a phone number that no one ever answers, and they seem to make me jump through hoops. I can give the exact spelling, I can give the exact statement, but they just don't want to help me. Now the district, Mrs. Ellicott, they're going to do what the district does best. They're going to represent the district. But that's where you come in as the board. You represent the public. And when the public makes a public records request, I would hope you'd support the public in getting the district to fill that request, even if it's uncomfortable. It's my bell, Mrs. Ellicott. Time for me to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Famika Bonner. Famika Bonner. Stacy Steggert. Stacy Steggert. Polly Carr. Polly Carr. Roberta Cathcart, I know you are here. Well, welcome up.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. Hello and good evening. My name is Roberta Cathcart, and I am a special education paraprofessional at Joseph M. Gallagher. I'd like to start by congratulating everyone who worked incredibly hard to get the word out about the levy, myself included. Because of our efforts, some of us can keep our jobs for a little bit longer, maybe. I spend a lot of time advocating for my fellow paras, and while I suppose I should be grateful for our measly raise, it really does nothing for morale when paras are being physically harmed by the students we're to care for. When I first became a para, as I went through the onboarding process, I wondered when my specific training would take place. Sure, I'd worked with children before, but not in a special ed classroom. How was I going to know what to do? Who would help me? Surprisingly, there was none. That was almost 7 years ago, and I can guarantee you that there still isn't any specific training for oncoming paras who are now faced with even more difficult behaviors. While paras are buying bite sleeves with money out of their own shallow pockets to prevent being bitten, it doesn't protect the rest of their bodies from being pinched, kicked, and spat upon. We get furniture thrown at us, and because of CMSD's hands-off policy, there's nothing we can do to protect ourselves and whomever might be in the path of destruction. In spite of this, we still go back to work day after day because these kids need help, not abandonment. I'm not sure what it's like in other special ed classrooms, but I witness this on a daily basis at my school and in my own classroom. Thanks to Ms. Polly Carr and her records request saga, I learned that taxpayers paid $7,500 for Lisa Farmer Cole's tuition for the Cleveland Leadership Center program. Can you please tell me how that enrichment training pertains to what's going on in a special ed classroom or any classroom at all? Paras are being placed in settings with extreme behaviors with zero training and minimal guidance. Why is this okay? It's more than just being overlooked. Paras are an afterthought, even though we are the ones working with the kids every minute of our workday. Please consider spending some of that dough on additional training and supports for paras. We shouldn't have to fend for ourselves. It doesn't feel at all equitable.
Thank you, Ms. Cathcart. That concludes our public participation period. Next, the board will consider the adoption of 8 resolutions in the areas of finance and equity and culture. The board discussed all but one of these resolutions at our November 6th board work session. The chair will now entertain a motion to adopt the following 3 resolutions. 6.01, approving the general fund 5-year forecast, financial forecast. 6.02, authorizing the acceptance of a grant from the U.S. Department of Education and authorizing the CEO to spend the funds in accordance with the terms and conditions of the grant. And 6.03, authorizing the acceptance of grants from Battelle Memorial Institute, Martha Holden Jennings Foundation, Parker Foundation, and Project Lead the Way, and authorizing the CEO to spend the funds in accordance with the terms and conditions of the grants. Is there a motion on the floor?
So move.
Thank you. These 3 resolutions are our finance resolutions, which the board discussed on November 6th. Dr. Morgan, any additional explanation?
With Resolution 6.01, the board will be approving the school district's 5-year forecast of operational revenues and expenditures. Under state law, all boards of education must approve and submit to the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce a general fund 5-year financial forecast each year. An initial forecast by November 30th and an updated forecast by May 31st. This proposed forecast now reflects the fact that 2 weeks ago the voters passed Issue 49. With Resolution 6.02, the board will be accepting a grant in the amount of $204,000 from the U.S. Department of Education to support low-income and first-generation college students, to help support low-income first-generation college students and help them prepare for college and receive the support needed to succeed in post-secondary education, and authorizing the CEO to spend these grant funds in accordance with the terms and conditions of the grant. With Resolution 6.03, the board will be accepting the following grants. From Battelle Memorial Institute, grants totaling $30,000 to build CMSD scholars robotics and coding literacy in order to unlock future academic and career opportunities through various STEM projects at Atlee Stevenson, Halle, Lewis Munoz Marin, Mary B. Martin, MC Squared STEM, and Sunbeam Schools. From Martha Holden Jennings Foundation, a grant in the amount of $15,000 to support the Arts Impact Program at Wilbur Wright School. From Parker Foundation, a grant in the amount of $10,000 to support STEM professional development at CMSD. And from Project Lead the Way, a grant in the amount of $20,000 to support the implementation of Project Lead the Way Gateway Computer Science Program at Garrett Morgan High School.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. Any additional questions from board members? Hearing no further discussion, Mr. Stockdill, would you please call the roll on this motion?
Mrs. Alcott?
Yes.
Mr. Briggs?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Mrs. LeBrun? Yes. Dr. Streeter?
Yes.
Mrs. Welchow? Yes. Motion passes with 6 votes.
Thank you. The resolutions are adopted. The chair will now entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 6.04, accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county fiscal officer.
So moved.
Thank you. This is an additional finance resolution, Dr. Morgan. Since we did not discuss this at the November board work session, could you please provide an explanation?
Yes, with this resolution, the board will accept updated property tax rates for calendar year 2025. The board previously adopted a resolution accepting the tax rates at its April 23, 2024 business meeting, but with the passage of Issue 49, these property tax rates need to be updated to reflect the additional 8.6 mills approved by the voters. This resolution therefore updates the general fund millage from the rate of 74.20 mills to 82.80 mills. While Issue 49 also included 2.65 mills for $295 million in bonds, The levy tax rate for the bond retirement fund will remain at 4.9 mils, incorporating savings from the conclusion or refunding of previously issued bonds. This resolution was not on the November 6th board work session, as you heard, as the Cuyahoga County Fiscal Officer had not yet prepared the updated document since that was just one day after the election.
Thank you. Any discussion from board members? All right. Hearing no further discussion, Mr. Stockdale, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Ellicott,
Yes.
Mr. Briggs,
Yes.
Ms. Jones, Mrs. LeBrun,
Yes.
Dr. Sridhar, Mrs. Welchow. Motion passes with 6 votes.
Thank you. This resolution is adopted. The chair will now entertain a motion to adopt the following 4 resolutions. 7.01, authorizing the employment of teaching, non-teaching, and school-based administrative staff. 7.02, authorizing the reclassification of employees. 7.03, accepting the retirements, resignations, and other separations of employees. And 7.04, authorizing the issuance of limited contracts for differential positions and the payment of additional earned compensation to employees. Thank you. These are our equity and talent resolutions, which the board discussed on November 6th. Dr. Morgan, any further explanation of these resolutions?
Yes, these are routine monthly talent and equity resolutions. Resolution 7.01, authorizing 75 new hires. 7.02, authorizing the reclassification of 20 employees. Resolution 7.03 accepts 31 separations of employees. Resolution 7.04 authorizes limited contracts for differentials and payment of additional compensation to 169 employees. Further details of each resolution are set forth in the Exhibit A attached to each resolution.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? Mr. Stockdale, would you please call the roll? Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones, Mrs. LeBrun, Dr. Sridhar, Mrs. Welchow. Motion passes with 6 votes.
Thank you. These resolutions are adopted. Is there any old business? Is there any new business? The next regular board meeting will be a board work session on Tuesday, December 3rd at 6:30 p.m. at Arnold Pinckney East Professional Center. The chair will now entertain the motion that the board enter into executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment and employment of public employees and officials, preparing for negotiations with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, and conferring with attorneys concerning disputes involving the Board of Education that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. So moved. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Ms. Ellicott,
Yes.
Mr. Briggs,
Yes.
Ms. Jones, Mrs. LeBrun, Dr. Sridhar, Mrs. Welchow. Motion passes with 6 votes.
Thank you. The board will now move into executive session to briefly, to conduct further business. Excuse me. The board will move into executive session and then return to this room to briefly conduct further business. The board is now back in public session. The chair will now entertain a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the 3-day suspension of a teaching employee. Dr. Morgan, any explanation on this resolution?
Yes, this resolution is to authorize a 3-day suspension of a teaching employee for violation of district policies, procedures, and rules.
Any discussion from board members? Hearing no discussion, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Ellicott,
Yes.
Mr. Briggs,
Yes.
Ms. Jones, Mrs. LeBrun, Dr. Sridhar, Mrs. Welch-Howe. Motion passes with 6 votes.
Thank you. The resolution passes. As announced earlier, the next regular board meeting will be on Tuesday, December 3rd at 6:30 p.m. at Arnold Pinckney East Professional Center. The chair will now entertain a motion to adjourn this board business meeting.
So move.
Thank you. Hearing no objection, this meeting is adjourned. Go Cavs, go Vikings. Have a good night.